Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the GG Report. I'm glad you're tuned in. We have some exciting ideas to discuss today. Let's begin from the start. A gentleman called Edmund Burke, an Irishman, one time said a very popular statement that you've heard before: the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. Today, our show, we're going to talk about the Hesabika Trust program, a program called Mentoring Christians, that has to do with mentoring Christians in politics and public service through a program they call Governance Internship Program, or GPRO. And I have a special guest to help me go through this program. And so welcome, Madam Rachel, to the show.
Thank you very much.
It's good to have you here, and I'm glad that you agreed to come on this program. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, the GG Report is a platform where we delve into big, bold ideas and have honest conversation across a range of subjects, political, social, economic. And today, actually, we're going to kind of like go to the legal side of things because I think that's very, very important. I would like now to introduce our guest very briefly, and then I'm going to ask her to tell us about herself a little bit further. My guest today is Rachel Kitonyo Devotu, and Rachel is a trustee of Hesabika. I will be giving you more details about what Hesabika is about. She is also a regional coordinator, Africa, for a program called Makabe Center for Law and Cancer. And she has done many other things in the past. She's a lawyer. She has a legal background, and I'm going to be asking her to tell us her story about that. So, Rachel, welcome to the GG Report. Good to have you.
Pleasure.
Very good. So let's start from your story. Tell us about your background and what inspired you to pursue a law profession. So I think we can start from there.
So it's quite interesting. I think I've always wanted to be a lawyer. Mm-hmm. I remember when I was about 5-6 years old, I was agitating for the human rights of our dog.
Okay.
So my dad was beating the dog, and I was protesting and saying that's not right.
Okay.
And so from very early on, I knew I wanted to be a lawyer.
All right.
Initially, I wanted the bright lights. So there was this TV show called Ali McBeal.
Okay.
That used to have this young lady lawyer, very eloquent. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to work in a big law firm, the corner office, be a hotshot lawyer.
Yes.
So I went to Parkland's Faculty of Law, did moot courts as a student, and I loved it. And I knew I had a career in litigation.
Okay.
However, in second year, I worked for 3 months at a legal aid clinic run by the Kenya Christian Lawyers Fellowship in Mombasa. And this exposed me to the justice side of law.
Okay.
And so we were representing largely women and children. And so you'd have women whose children have been raped or defiled. I remember one time going with a lawyer, and we were chasing a case in Kilifi where the man has been accused of rape and the police have refused to arrest him. Okay. And so we were at the police station trying to follow up. And you can imagine the rapist and the victim live in the same village. Okay. And every day she meets the rapist, and the police have refused to arrest. So we are going to the police station to ask what is happening, and I thought the lawyer was being too polite. Yes. So when the investigating officer came, I lost it. Yes. And I just told him, "You, what kind of man are you? Can you imagine if this was your wife, this was your daughter, this was your sister?" And I yelled for like 10 minutes, and everybody came out to see. So after that, the lawyer is like, "Okay, we don't quite talk to police like that." I'm like, "No, he needed to be told off." So I went back to campus. I finished, but I still wanted the corner office. So I did my pupillage at a big law firm. Okay. I wouldn't say which, but it's been in the news recently, representing the Chief Justice. Okay. And I thought I was well on my way to the corner office.
Yeah. No, it's very attractive. I mean, if you want to become a lawyer, you want to become the best, and then work with the big ones and, earn big money. Yeah. Yes, and be very successful. Yes.
So at the end of my pupillage, the Fellowship of Christian Unions. They run a program called Short-Term Experience in Ministry.
Yes.
So I'd interacted with Focus while I was a member of the CU.
Okay.
Came and asked me if I would consider to join them for 1 year to work at a campus.
Okay.
And I really struggled with that decision because I was like, I'm finally in the kind of law firm where I want to build a career.
Yes.
And how do I explain taking off 1 year to go into student ministry?
Okay.
I mean, how does that link to being a lawyer? So I really struggled, and God eventually asked me, do you believe that I can bring you back into the law firm? So I told him yes. So he said, okay, take the year off. So I told my bosses, and by then they'd already given me my own office.
Yes.
I knew they were actually going to hire me.
Yes.
And then I told them, sorry, I'm leaving. And they're like, where are you going? And I say, I'm going into student ministry.
Okay.
And they couldn't get it.
All right.
So anyway, I worked for a year at Kenyatta University Christian Union, working with the students. And that gave me a passion for young people, for mentoring.
Yeah.
And then in the interaction with Focus, they have a branch which was called the Focus Associates Social Action Mobilization Office.
Okay.
And so this tried to get the students, once they graduated, to use their profession to impact society.
Okay.
So I attended one of their conferences in 2004,
Yes.
and the theme was lobbying and advocacy.
Okay.
And so by then, of course, I had graduated, and I was waiting to be admitted to the bar.
Okay.
And I started asking myself, as a lawyer, what can I do to give back to society?
Okay.
So in that conference, we were a group of about 20. And so following the group discussions, at the end of the conference,
Yes.
we are like, let's have a meeting and see what to do about giving back.
Yeah. So I think you can hold it there. Viewers, as you follow this conversation, Rachel has a big story, and one of the things you've talked about, you've mentioned actually in passing, and I think it's something we need to emphasize here on the Focus Fellowship of Christian Unions in Kenya.
Yes.
Is a Focus, is an organization that actually works with Christian unions in universities and colleges.
Yes.
And coordinates the activities, and kind of like it's an umbrella body that empowers student unions and ensures that they're actually functioning. And then the STEM program, which Rachel is talking about, was started several years ago, I think in somewhere 2000 and something.
Yes.
And it's been a program, an opportunity where someone who graduates from university can actually have 1 year to serve students. This time around, you're not a student, but you're working within the Focus system to support students and to support the Christian Union in the university.
Yes.
And you'd stay in the university.
Yes. So you would get a house either in the campus or nearby.
Okay.
And you worked with the Christian Union, largely the Christian Union leadership.
Yes.
So you did training
Yes.
on everything from preaching to time management to, if there were students in politics, you worked with them.
Yes.
So in essence, you supported the CU leaders. You did a bit of discipleship and mentoring.
Yes.
And so it's a 1 year program that really immerses you in student ministry.
That's true. That's true. And that's very helpful because, these students, come in, from high school. They are obviously growing and learning their way around. And if you've gone through the whole system yourself, then you have something to offer. And that's actually kind of like inspired the idea of giving back, the idea of what can you do to actually support others who are coming into behind you.
Yes.
Okay. So then you attended this conference. So this very eye-opening, life-changing conference. Tell us about that. Yeah.
So we had somebody who came from Parliament to speak to us.
Yes.
And he was talking about the challenges that members of Parliament face.
Yes.
And we criticized them a lot.
Okay.
Most of the criticism is justified.
Yes.
But I think the point he meant, because at that point where I was, I felt that MPs were overpaid and underworked.
Okay.
So when you looked at the amount of legislation that came out of Parliament,
yes.
And so remember, this is 2004, 2005.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you'd get in a year, maybe there are 6 bills that pass.
Okay.
So a lot of politicking and very little actual legislative work going on.
Okay.
And so he said people criticize them for that,
yes.
But he said that there's also a reason why that happens.
Yes.
And so there's no degree called being member of Parliament.
Okay.
So these people get into Parliament, and who has taught them how to be an MP?
All right.
Remember those days, right now there's a Center for Parliamentary Studies.
Yes.
Those days it wasn't there.
Okay.
So you merely got either a very good politician,
yes.
or you got some people who genuinely wanted to lead,
yes.
but they're doctors, they're teachers, they're farmers, they're rabble-rousers.
Yes.
And then they end up in parliament.
Yes.
And so they don't have the support that is necessary to actually do the legislative work.
Okay.
And so he said one of the biggest lack that they have is who gives them technical support.
Okay.
So say you get a member of parliament who wants to bring a private member's bill.
Okay.
At that point in time, they would have to draft it themselves. Remember,
Yes.
they are not a lawyer.
Yes.
And even me as a lawyer then, who are not taught drafting. Drafting is a specialized skill.
Okay.
So you'd have to draft the law yourself.
Yes.
And then you'd have to figure out which people to get to support you, some academics to do for you some research.
Yes.
And then eventually you'd have to then do the political work of garnering support.
Yes.
You'd have to do the media advocacy. So
Yes.
it's a lot of work to get a private member's bill through the door.
Okay.
And so he said, instead of criticizing,
Yes.
what you can do if you're concerned
Yes.
is to step in and fill that gap.
Okay.
And so we said, that's great. We are lawyers. I think this is one place we can plug in
Yes.
to make a difference.
Okay.
And so all of us had day jobs. At the time I was working at a law firm. All the rest were working. So we would meet on Saturdays and brainstorm and discuss. And eventually we realized we were forming a lobby group.
Okay.
Now again, there's no university that has a course called lobbying.
Okay.
So we had to figure out all of this as we went along.
Yes.
And so we said, let's pick one issue to kind of cut our teeth on.
Yes.
And so when we looked around, we asked ourselves, is there an issue that has been dragging in parliament that probably is not popular, politically may not be expedient,
Yes.
and that's the reason it's not moving?
Yes.
But then even deeper than that,
Yes.
if it is enacted,
Yes.
it will have a real impact on
Okay.
every Kenyan.
Okay. On the
And so-
society.
on the
yes.
society.
Yes.
And so we landed on the issue of tobacco control.
Okay.
And so there'd been a tobacco control bill pending since 1998
Oh.
in Kenya, and obviously was not making headway because there's a huge opponent called BAT on the other side.
Yeah.
With deep pockets,
Yes.
can bribe MPs,
Yes.
can bribe all the way up to the highest officers in the land.
Okay.
And so obviously they had put a hold on this bill.
Yes.
And so we decided, why don't we pick this up
Okay.
and learn how to do the business by actually getting this law passed.
Get this done. Get this
So
done.
we
Yeah.
picked it up in 2004, walked over into the Ministry of Health,
Yes.
said, we are aware there's a bill you're struggling with.
Yes.
We want to help.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we're not making much headway. I think there was some political interference that had happened.
Yes.
And so typically what these people will do is that they compromise a politician.
Yes.
So they'll come and do a development project, CSR,
Yes.
in your constituency.
Yes.
So they say, we'll come and help you build a toilet.
Okay.
On the surface, that looks really good.
Yes.
Until you realize that that toilet, anytime now you try to do anything,
Yes.
remember our toilet?
Yeah.
And the toilet is branded. So something like that had happened. And
Okay.
so the politicians in the ministry really couldn't move forward the bill.
Okay.
So we then said, okay, then clearly let's change strategy. We can't work with the ministry. Let's look for a member of parliament that is willing to push this bill.
Okay.
So we got the Honorable Gor Sungu.
Yeah.
He was willing to do it as a private member's bill.
Yeah.
And then we teamed up with Kaguthi at Nakada.
Okay.
So Kaguthi was so excited. And you know,
Okay.
Kaguthi was passionate. I mean, I
Yes.
wish every public servant could be like Kaguthi. He has his faults, but
Yes.
in terms of passion, you couldn't fault him for that.
Okay.
And he said, finally, I have gotten lawyers who are willing to work with me.
All right.
So he said, I can't give you any money, I can't pay you,
Yes.
but I can give you a boardroom anytime you need to meet.
Okay.
And if there's any politician you want to talk to,
Yes.
I can connect you.
All right.
So we would meet in his boardroom on Saturdays. We
Yes.
started drafting the bill.
Yes.
And then now together with Sungu, we started the process of getting it through the House.
Okay.
And so this was basically a pressure tactic because
Okay.
ultimately tobacco control is a health issue. The Ministry of Health should have been pushing it.
Yes.
So now when our bill got to first reading, that prompted the ministry to also table theirs for first reading.
Okay.
And then when they would slacken on their bill, we push ours for second reading.
Yes.
So eventually there were two bills competing in the House.
Yes.
And the speaker is like, this is creating confusion because
Yes.
there was tobacco control bill number 1
Yes.
and tobacco control bill number 2.
Okay.
So eventually ministry was ordered to work with Sungu and now we sat down with them, merged the two bills
Yes.
and eventually got a strong tobacco control law, which eventually passed in 2007.
Okay.
So
And it got the assent of the president.
got the assent of the president.
Yeah.
And Kenya actually now has got one of the best tobacco control laws in Africa.
Absolutely. Wonderful, wonderful. That's a very interesting background to the whole idea. I think it touches on the various elements, especially because today we want to focus on how we mobilize and mentor Christians, especially in the political space. So which is a very, very good thing. Now, you've successfully now put in a bill through Parliament and helped that. And then I think then what became of the boardroom, the Kaguthi boardroom using a team of lawyers?
So eventually we realized we had to register.
Okay.
So now become formally organized.
Okay.
So we registered an NGO called the Institute for Legislative Affairs.
Okay.
and still working to date.
Yes.
So I was the first executive director, and then I left. And since
and then my friend,
control,
my friend Vincent is the one who replaced you. Vincent
me.
Kimon. So people know Vincent. He's been on this show before, so that's a good thing.
So one of the things we picked from Focus was the idea of getting young people.
Okay.
And so Institute for Legislative Affairs runs a mentorship program.
Okay.
And so we would get a young graduate fresh from the university.
Yes.
And basically bring them in and train them. So Vincent joined us when he was about 2 to 3 years out of campus.
Okay.
And eventually then when I left, he took over.
Okay.
So that's the model, that we get young people fresh, so long as they are passionate.
Okay.
You cannot train passion.
Yeah.
Passion is innate. Anything else can be trained. Skills can be picked. You can learn subject matters.
Yes.
But passion must be inherent. And so for us, if we find a young, passionate person,
yes,
we can train anything else into them.
Absolutely.
And so we picked tobacco control. We are also behind the unclaimed financial assets law in this country.
Yes.
And then we've done work in mental health, on road safety, and on alcohol control.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's very, very good. Wonderful. Now, if you're following this conversation, we are talking about how do we mentor people into the political space. And Rachel has done some fantastic work. She's been involved right from the early days of her career, and she discovered her passion, you know, I think at the police station when she really just aired out, you know, her frustration, and felt that there was need for someone to step in for someone whose rights had been abused. So if you're following us, please send us your comment on the numbers below. Those watching from the social media platforms, please comment. And if you have a question, you can write it down, and please follow us. You might also want to get in touch with Rachel. Please just let us know through those platforms. So now, Rachel, you got involved in this whole thing as a profession, you know, playing in this field, legislative affairs, working with politicians and pushing agendas, which clearly you noticed that were not necessarily, you know, they had to be very well done so that then they can find their way, navigate their way through the political, you know, what do you call it? You know, the political wind and challenges.
Yes.
What was your experience like? What challenges did you face? Here you are, you're Christian, you're professional, you're a lawyer, and you have to navigate through people who you clearly know that they probably aren't interested in what you're trying to pursue.
So one of the challenges, of course, was youth. And as I'm saying, some of these things, there's no school that teaches them. And so, for example, like what we are trying to do in GPRO, I wish I had this kind of program that then. Because at that time, I think I was 22, 23.
Yes.
So you're passionate, you've got energy, but sometimes you don't have knowledge.
Yes.
And you need somebody to hold your hand.
Okay.
Now, one of the other things that I did, I've had quite a checkered career, is that in 2006, I felt so fine, I've engaged with the political process from the side of parliament. And I felt I want to engage in politics.
Okay.
So I met a group of friends who were politicians from Western Kenya who wanted to run. And so we had mutual interests. I was always looking for people who, when they get into parliament, can then become our next push our private members bill. So they invited me to a meeting at their political party. I went in and I was asked to become a party member.
Oh, okay.
So I paid 5,000 shillings and became a card-carrying member of the party. And because I was very young, vibrant, I talk a lot. Then I was roped into the party's youth wing. And eventually I ended up working in ODM.
Okay.
So I was now working in the party office. And I was a PA to a candidate. So now I met politics on the ground.
Wow.
And again, the challenges were the same. Young lady. There are a lot of men who then see, this is a very nice young girl. So you'd be propositioned and you had to figure out how to navigate that. So obviously I'm born again. I'm not interested in being a rich man's girlfriend. And yet these are powerful people and you may need them. You know, you never burn bridges. So you have to figure out how to say, no, sorry, I'm not interested. So I was lucky that the politician I was working for held my hand and so mentored me in that process. And there are so many other young people who need that. And that is one of the things that we want to do through GPRO. Get these people when they are still young, they are still passionate. And more importantly, install values. And so the politician I was working with, I actually at some point lived in her house. So I got to see her life.
Yes.
in terms of work in her constituency, mingle with her people. I was entrusted with money. So
Okay.
there are times I would be carrying 2 to 3 million shillings in the handbag,
Oh.
which wasn't mine.
Okay.
And you can imagine I'm just 24.
Oh, okay.
And having to deal with constituents, pay out money. So I was known as the money lady.
Okay.
I remember one time we were campaigning in Western.
Yes.
And we were at a campaign rally, and
Yes.
I got out to listen to the speech.
Yes.
And then I forgot to keep an eye on the candidate.
Yes.
So when she finished, she jumped into the car and they drove off.
Yes.
And I was left in the crowd.
Okay.
And everybody knew I'm the one that carries money.
Yeah.
They converged on me. I was almost kidnapped, you know. So it was an interesting bit, but I think what that birthed in me
Yes.
was one, understanding Kenya.
Yes.
Many young people don't know their country.
Yes.
Understanding issues from the perspective of the constituency, from the ground.
Yes.
Because we can be elitist. Remember, I'm a lawyer.
Yes.
And I've mingled with politicians, the high and mighty.
Yes.
You have to be able to see these issues from the perspective of the ground.
Absolutely.
And so that 1 year of campaigning, being in Kajiado, seeing children who don't have shoes.
Yes.
You know, when you give them a sweet, it's like Christmas has arrived.
Yes.
I mean, I'm a grown-up middle class. I've never slept hungry.
Yes.
Realizing that there are children who go to bed without sleeping.
Yes.
That there are children who've never worn shoes.
Without eating. Yeah, and
You know?
not worn shoes. Yes.
So seeing Kenya from that side, and then I've grown up in Nairobi.
Yes.
So when you go to Garissa, when you go to Mandera,
Yes.
you realize there's another Kenya.
Yes.
There's the Kenya that you have here,
Uh-huh.
alafu kuna ingine hapo nje. And so that changed a lot about how I think about things.
Yes.
And so when you talk about justice, when you start thinking about how do the laws and the structures
Yes.
actually work to change the lives of these people,
Yes.
I think for me that was an eye-opening experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it must have really like inspired you. I mean, really, you know, you have the tools, the technical, know-how, the technical skills. You're a lawyer, you're ambitious, you have the skills, and you know you can make a change. And here you are interacting with people, and look, this is amazing. So please keep following us. We want to, talk about now the Hesabika. We want to talk about Hesabika. A lot of people are not familiar with Hesabika. And again, it's the whole idea of elitism. You know, there are very good ideas that are out there that the person on the ground, the common man, is not aware. But of course, there is need for structures and institutions along the way, along the chain, until you get to the person on the ground. So tell us about Hesabika. You're a member of the board of trustees for Hesabika. What's the institution about? And then how it links to the mentorship program.
So you remember when I started, I said when we formed the Institute for Legislative Affairs,
Yeah.
we're basically saying that we want to stop complaining
Yes.
about a problem
Yes.
and do something about it.
Yes.
And so that's the same idea behind Hesabika.
Okay.
Hesabika's motto is translating concern into action.
Okay.
And so Kenyans like to complain.
Yes.
We complain about our politicians. We complain about the economy.
Yes.
We complain about the education system.
Yes.
We complain about the healthcare. If you want to complain, there are a lot. We complain about corruption. There are many things to complain about.
Absolutely.
And so what Hesabika is saying is that let's stop complaining.
Yes.
If this issue bothers you so much,
Yes.
do something about it.
Yes.
And the way in which you go about it is, if you look at the totality of the issues, you'll get overwhelmed.
Yes.
How can one person change Kenya?
Yes.
The reality is that you can't.
Yes.
But you can change one thing.
Yes.
So pick the one thing
Yes.
that you're concerned about.
Okay.
The same way we did.
Yes.
We said we are lawyers, we
Yes.
are unhappy with parliament.
Yes.
We picked that one thing
Yes.
and we did something about it.
Absolutely.
And so Hesabika is a baby of the Fellowship of Christian Unions.
Yes.
And at a conference in 2016,
Yes.
that brought together Christian professionals,
Mm-hmm.
the idea was, how can we change Kenya?
Okay.
And so how can we translate all of these concerns that we have into action?
Okay.
And so after this conference, then it was realized that we need to set up an organization separate from Focus, because
Yes.
Focus's primary mission is evangelizing the campus students.
Yes.
And if then you start this whole new line of thought,
Yes.
it can detract from the primary mission.
Okay.
But we are still a child of Focus. So
Yes.
the Focus is one of the trustees of Hesabika.
Okay.
And so what we are all about is mobilizing people, starting first with Christians,
Yes.
professionals and students,
Yes.
and then eventually the whole nation to stand up and do something, which
Okay.
is now the meaning of kuhesabika.
Okay.
And you see, hesabika is, in English, we call it imperative. It's
Okay.
a command.
Yeah.
It's not tafadhali to hesabike.
Yes.
It is stand up and be counted.
Absolutely.
And so the ways in which we are standing up to be counted, there are about 6 key pillars of Hesabika.
Okay.
And today we'll talk about the one that brought us here today.
Yeah.
And so basically how to raise the next generation of leaders in this country.
Okay.
And then a second key one is integrity in the workplace.
Okay.
And so in looking at the many problems, we realize that in the political arena,
Yes.
political and governance, there is a problem in Kenya.
Okay.
And so the problem is that, one, I feel we have got too much politics
Yes.
and not enough governing.
Okay.
And there is a place for politics.
Yes.
There are political parties. That's the way by which we select leaders. But once they get into office, they need to stop politicking and actually govern. So when you're an MCA, when you're an MP, when you're in the Senate, even when you're the president of Kenya, we put you there to govern.
Okay, yes.
And so the challenge in Kenya that we have is that we then get people who lack what I would call the software.
Okay.
And so the second problem that we have seen that we are trying to correct with our program is the lack of values.
Okay, so there are two issues. There is need for, to get into, to Hesabika, to stand up and be counted. That's what the Swahili Hesabika means.
Yes.
Stand up to be counted.
Yes.
And then there is the issue of the social values, value-driven kind of engagement. And you're saying that, look, there is a place for politics and there is a place for governance. So you can come into, as a politician, you get into parliament, for example. But once you're in parliament, your next duty is to govern.
Yes.
And that requires that you know what you're doing.
Yes.
And then you have and then the moral framework within which you actually engage. Okay, very good. You're following us on the GG report. We're talking about this mentorship program, how to mentor young people who are passionate. I like Rachel, what Rachel is talking about, that passion is something you cannot train, but passion is where you start from. So if you're passionate about leading Kenya, changing things in this country, and not just complaining, there is a way you can pick up a matter and really engage with it, and there will be results. So that's a very good conversation, and so we want to go into a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about so how Hesabika has, of course, you said right now one of the key things you picked up is the mentorship program. And hopefully that can be the way you contribute in changing the narrative. And so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the other issues that you're dealing with. And then we talk about a few more things, what you think Kenya should become. Okay, so we go into a break. And then when we come back, we'll go back to the conversation on the mentorship program. So bye for now, but please don't go away. Stay tuned, and we'll come back to this. Thank you.